Hello there and welcome to my channel. Today I thought we'd take a look at Lightroom Classic Slideshow, and what I've done, I've created a slideshow using these images from a trip I had to Hamburg, and what I'll do is I will play that slideshow now, and then once we've viewed that, it's only about 2 minutes long, we'll then look at what I needed to do in Library and in the slideshow module to create it. So let's start by looking at the slideshow. Okay, so we've seen the slideshow. I think some of you would agree there aren't many bells or whistles to it, but having said that, it is quite easy to set up, and once you've done it once or twice, I think you could knock these slideshows out very quickly if you needed to. So let's move on and have a look at what I needed to do in the library initially to get this thing set up. So first of all, if we come over to the left-hand pane, what I did was I have a folder called Hamburg on my external storage. I've added that as a folder and I've imported the images in it. I've got 39 images and I'm going to use all of them in the slideshow, or I did use all of them in the slideshow. However, you can, if you had more images, if you had 139, you could just select the ones you want. I would find it easier if I was doing that to then grade them, give them 3 stars or something, and then filter out the rest so that I'm just left with the photos I want to use in the slideshow. But otherwise you can just use the images that you've selected. So yeah, so chose my folder, I've got my images, I'm focused on the folder so that I could then sort the images. If I was in the catalog view, you see here I've got 39 images. If I look at the catalog here, I can see there's 39 images there. That was the import that I did. Now if I was focused on catalog, I would not be able to move these images. I would not be able to sort them. So just be aware, you can't sort in catalog. You need to be either in your folder or in a collection. So I'm going to come back to my Hamburg folder again. So yeah, so I've now sorted these images how I want them, and so I'm ready to move across to the slideshow tab. There is a shortcut to the slideshow tab, but it is 3 keystrokes, so I'm not even going to bother with it. I'm just going to click on the slideshow. So we're now in the slideshow module. There are 3 areas where we need to be looking. Firstly, in the left-hand pane, we also need to be aware of what's going on down here below, and then the main gubbins configurations that we'll be doing will be on the right-hand side. But first of all, let's start off on the left-hand side, and we come down and look at template browser, and we need to select a template to use for our slideshow. If you hover over them, you'll get a bit of an example of what they look like. These are the templates that come with it, and you can create your own if you want. I'm going to use the caption and rating template. So I'm going to select that, and I'll explain a bit more about that later, perhaps as we move on. Before we go over to the main pane with the configurations, I just want to show you this down here because this is really quite important. This is where we select the images that we want. Now, I mentioned I'm using all the images that were in that folder, all 39 I believe. So I would select all film strip photos. If you were using just some of those images in your folder and you've made your selection, then you would select that. Or if you flagged up your images, you could use that. But I'm going to use all film strip photos. But you need to be aware of that before you actually create this. Otherwise, you might find it's not going to work for you. So just be aware of that. It doesn't stand out an awful lot and it's quite easy to miss. So I start off at the left, double check this bit first, and then I start looking at the main configurations. Now, over on the right hand side, we've got a number of configuration boxes, and let's just quickly go through them from top to bottom. So to start with, we have the options box, and at the very top we have a little checkbox here that we can select if we want to zoom to fill the frame. Now, if I just click on that just to show you, that's what it does. If I select a second image, a third, you get the idea. It's zooming in quite tightly and pretty much destroying the image. So that's not something I want to use. So let's untick that. We have the option here. The next option, we've got stroke border. We can add a stroke, a outline to our image if we want. At the moment, it's set, I think, by default to white at 1 pixel. I'm just going to change that to black by clicking in the color box, and I'm just going to select black. I'm going to close that out, and I'm going to leave that at 1 pixel. So we've now got a stroke around the box at 1 pixel. Coming down a bit, we've got cast shadow. We can set a little shadow to the image like you get in most slideshows, really. But let's just see if I can just make it stand out a bit more. It's not very obvious in that example at the moment. Let's just see if the offset. Yeah, hopefully we'll see it a bit stronger now. We can change the angle of it if we want to. We can increase the opacity of it. There, I think that stands out enough there. So we can add a cast shadow if we want, and I will leave that in. Next, we come down to the layout control box. In layout, this is where we can show or hide the guidelines that we're seeing on the screen at the moment. So if I deselect that, you can see that the guidelines have gone away. These are there just to help us really move around text, help us with alignment. They don't show up on the final slideshow when you export it, so there's no harm in leaving that on. So you can change them around. I don't really see much point, so I'm just going to leave that. I'm going to leave it on, but leave it as it is. Down here, you have aspect preview. There's a drop box. Most slideshows are either set to screen or 16:9. If I set to 16:9, you'll see there's no change there at all. But if I change to the perhaps more older-fashioned 4:3 ratio, you'll see that there was a change there. But I'm going to go back to screen, which would probably be the more regular chosen option. And that then brings us to the next box down, which is overlays. In overlays, we have, if we switch it on, we've got this check button here for identity plate, and that's pretty much the title that will appear throughout the slideshow. And if you click in it, you can drag it around. And this is what you use your guidelines for, really. And you can edit your text, double click into it, and then write whatever you want to. You can change fonts, etc., size, whatever. So let's just cancel out of that. So I've just put in, just as an example, a brief tour of Hamburg. So I will leave that on, but that will appear on every slide during the slide check. Well, I think as you would have seen that. You have a button here. You can override the color, which will default to black. So I'm going to leave that. I preferred it to white. You can change opacity and scale. The scale would change the size of the text, so you don't have to do that inside the text. You can just do that there. And you can render a behind image. Not quite sure what that does, but I don't think I need it, so I'm not going to select it. We can add a watermark if we need to. I can't think of many reasons why I'd want to watermark a slideshow. I don't think I do much that's so sensitive that I would need to do that. But if we wanted to, we would select it and then go into edit watermarks, and we would then create the text for the watermark that we want to add. As simple as that, and then save it. So I'm just going to cancel out of that and deselect, as I do not want to watermark. Rating stars is a bit of a funny one. You can, if your images are if you've rated them with stars, you can show that in the images. So as each image goes past, you'll see how many stars it's been given. I personally can't think of any situation where I'd want to do that, but I'm sure people have a need because it's there. So if you select that, it will show the rating that you've given each of these images. So I'm going to deselect that. So I do not want to show rating stars. Text overlays. So your text overlays is text that you've put in your metadata of the individual images. Now, if I toggle this off, you see down here we've got, this is the very first image in my slideshow, Hamburg sign. That's a text overlay. And if I deselect that, you'll see that goes away. So if you wanted to add a text overlay, you would need to add the data in your metadata. And if I quickly go back to the library, and so we're focused on this first image there, and if we come over here and we are looking for metadata, come down here, and then you can see that under the caption box, that's where I've typed in Hamburg sign, and that's how you would add metadata. However, the downside, what I've noticed is that, okay, so I've given this image a title. I may not have a title for every single image or want to have a title for every single image, but if I go to my next image or anyone thereafter, it's already inserted the quotation marks. Now I can click on them and delete that, but I don't want to be doing that for all 39 images. I'm not sure if I can do that as a selection or not, but I don't find that particularly helpful to me. So for that reason, I'm not going to use the text overlays. But if you did want to do that, then that's how you do it. So I'm going to deselect that, and I had deselected it for the slideshow that you saw. Moving down, we now come to backdrop. So the backdrop, not surprisingly, controls the background that we see around our images. So the first checkbox that we can add a color wash to the image if you want, and that's more of a graded color wash. We can adjust the angle of it and the opacity. Moving down, we could also, if we wanted to, we could add a background image. But if we decide to do that, if I check the tick box, we have to use an image for the background that's already in your selection of images. So you would need to do that in advance, and bear in mind that when you select the images that you want to make your slideshow of, that you don't include your background image, otherwise that's going to come up as a slide. So but all you need to do if you wanted to, so add your additional image, could be just a nice background textured color or a company logo, company colors, whatever. Add it into your, import it into your folder, and then you would then just drag it up into that box there. I don't have a background image that I want to use, so I'm going to deselect that. Background color, that's what that does. What's the difference? I'm not quite sure what the difference between that and other ways of doing the same thing, so I'll leave that alone. Moving down, we come to titles. You can add an intro screen, so really I think you're talking about your first slide, and ending screen, your last slide. Now I've had a look at those. I didn't like them, and the reason I didn't like them is that because we have such limited functionality in the slideshow, I can't control how long you would have to look at the image. So if I put in some interesting text that I'd like to add to a front slide or to a rear slide, I can't control that you'd have enough time to read that. So I didn't find it very useful, but just to show it to you, so if you select the intro screen, click on that, you could then edit your text, and then you could put in there what you want. But again, I didn't find that very useful to me at all. I did notice that if you actually just click and hold the scale button, then the text remains there. Otherwise it disappears very quickly as soon as you move your cursor. So I didn't use the intro screens. I didn't really rate it. I think if I had something interesting I want to say, I would just create a text image in Photoshop or something else, and then just add that to my images rather than use this functionality, because it's so limited. So intro, no thank you. Ending, no thank you. So let's move on to music. So for music, this is where we add the music that you want to add to your slideshow, obviously. We have over here, it's switch on, switch off, rather than the checkbox that we've been using previously. So click on it to switch it on. You click on the plus button to add your music. I've already added a song because we've already done this slideshow, but you can add and remove your music there. You can see that it's 2 minutes 40 seconds was the track length. The one issue that I did have when I did this initially was I downloaded a copyright-free piece of music from the interweb, and it didn't work. And it was an MP3 file. I couldn't work out what it was, so I thought, well, maybe it's a dodgy download. So I tried some of my personal music tracks, and they happened to be M4A, and they worked fine. So it seems to be, or for me anyway, that this does not like MP3 files. So what I did with this particular track, which was an MP3, I just renamed it as a M4A, saved it in my folder, tried again, and it worked. So I just put that out there. I would have thought MP3s should have worked, but it didn't for me. So Yep, so we've got the track of music there, and you've got a button here where you can either set to your music to manual or automatic. I just selected the automatic, but I'll just bring it up a bit. There aren't many options. I couldn't control any kind of fade in or fade out to the music. And you may have noticed that on the slideshow, the fade out was very abrupt. I didn't like it at all. You do have a little bit of control over the slide length. And you've got crossfades here, but as this is, you've set this to automatic. I'm not sure how useful they were to me. And you've got a button here to fit to music. So it tries to bring in the images in line with the length of the music, but I just thought the fade out was really quite abrupt and wasn't overly impressed. Coming down a bit further, you've got the pan and zoom. If you select that, it defaults at very low, and that just gives you the slight movement of the images that you saw in the slideshow. So I left that at default, and that, to my mind, that was enough movement anyway. I wouldn't want to repeat the slideshow once you've watched it once. I would prefer that somebody decided to repeat it if they wanted to, rather than have it endlessly repeating. So I would deselect that. And I'm guessing that this random order, although we're under the yeah, I guess it would make sense, we're under playback. The random order would randomize the images in your show, which I didn't want to do, so I've not selected that. Coming down to the last bit, we've got this thing called playback screen. Doesn't actually do anything. You've got a checkbox to blank other screens. Not quite sure what that is supposed to do. Haven't found any use for that. You can set the quality. I've set it to high. And that is pretty much it. We're now ready. If you're happy with the settings that you made, you're now ready to export your slideshow. And or before you do that, you can do a preview or a play. Now the preview is less quality and is supposed to render quicker and synchronize your stuff a bit faster. Having tried preview and play, I didn't notice much difference between the two, so I would just go to play, have a look at what the screen, what your slideshow would look like, and see what you think. If you're happy with it, then come over again to the left-hand side, and you've got two options to finish off on. You can export your slideshow to a PDF. Now, as far as I understand, you'll get a PDF document, and each image would be on a separate page. Now, it might be that if you were exporting to PDF, you might want to add a watermark then. That would make sense to me, so that people aren't nicking your images. Or you export your video, and if I click on that just to show you, you then decide where you want to export it to. You can see here's my previous one, the one that you've seen. Select where you want it to go, desktop or whatever first. Give it a name. It saves it as an MP4 file, and I saved it as 1080, but you've got a couple of options there. And then click on save, and that was my slideshow. So to finish off, personally, I found the slideshow very basic. There's lots of software out there that can do a lot more, but as you're already, if you're already in Lightroom doing other stuff, this is a quick and easy way of creating a slideshow. I just think it doesn't compete with so many other things that are out there. Even mobile phones can produce better slideshows or have more options, more whistles and bells than what we're seeing here in Lightroom Classic. But having said that, it does produce quite an easy to create slideshow. So It's down to what you think of it. And I think that's about as much as I know about that. So I'll thank you for your time. I hope this helps, and I'll say goodbye. Thank you very much. Bye bye.